So, something that I notice a lot in the kind of high achieving, deep feeling, deep thinking women that I work with is this tendency they have to know themselves really well. So, maybe you know your attachment style, or you know your predominant archetype, or you just have a lot of self awareness about your habits and the way that you can often be too hard on yourself. And you might even feel like you kind of know what you need to do to kind of move out of this performance way of living that you're doing. And you might even feel like you're very aware that things aren't really working out the way that you want them to. And it feels way more like everything is based on should and who you would ideally be or who you're supposed to be. And you've got this awareness that you're burning out and things just aren't working, and that vision you have of your true self, of a different version of you, of maybe a future version of you, is just not quite the reality of where you're at right now. And a lot of times I notice that the women that I talk to have this awareness, and they're aware that things aren't quite working out the way they want, and they're not moving through life feeling as self trusting and present and alive and energized and peaceful as they want to. And on top of that, a lot of times they have a plan. They're working on it. They're going through this course, or they're reading this book, or they have a reading list of all the books they do need to read, or they've implemented or planned for the self care strategies. They're just struggling to really fit them into their busy schedule and get around to actually doing them. And they're just kind of always planning to heal, to move through, to take care of themselves. It's just not quite actually happening today. And they know a lot about their true selves, and yet they're just not quite living from their truth just yet. They know of it, they're thinking about it, but they're not embodying it, meaning they're not living from it, they're not expressing it, they're not moving with it. And they're constantly making decisions out of what would make sense, what makes sense logically, what makes sense to other people, instead of just making decisions based on what they truly desire. And they take a lot of time to make decisions because they have to kind of weigh the pros and cons, and they have to reflect on it, and they have to think about it, and they have to really think about what they want and how they're going to do things. And then they end up deciding on the thing that just makes most sense. And their reasoning isn't, this is what really feels true to me. This is what's moving with me right now. This is what I feel excited about. This is what I just feel called to do right now. This is what I'm passionate about. This is what I just feel so much joy and meaning in. It's, well, this is what I should do, or I think this is what I should do, or this is just what makes sense right now, or I've thought about it and this is what makes sense for right now. I'm thinking about it. I still need to think about it. I'm still thinking about it. And as a result, they kind of end up living out of performance. They're dimming their power to feel more accepted, or kind of feel like they can succeed because doing it their own way just doesn't make sense. And they're constantly living as who they should be and almost battling with this version of them that would be in this ideal scenario, instead of just embracing and accepting who they really are. And what I notice happens so much when we get stuck in those patterns is that we're constantly thinking about our way out. We're constantly thinking about how we're going to move through things. And we're constantly aware of, and we have knowledge of these different tips and tools and strategies. And we have awareness about our true self. And we kind of think that we can think our way to living in our truth. And we kind of just get stuck in this perfectionism procrastination of trying to see 10 steps ahead and trying to get to the place where it makes sense for us to do something. And we basically get stuck in this sense of, I want to feel this way, or I want to live this way, or I want to step into my full power. I want to live as my full authentic self, but I just don't know how. And because we don't know how, we get stuck planning, trying to figure out the how. And this is what I want to talk about today because that idea, that concept, and that trap that we get caught into when we're just stuck planning and trying to figure out how, because we think that that is how we're going to move out of whatever we're wanting to move out of and into living in our truth. That's not how it works. And that's why you can get stuck planning for so long. And whether this is in terms of kind of emotional healing, or whether you're building a business, or whether you want to find the love of your life, as long as you're just planning for it and thinking about it, you're never going to get to the place where you're actually living from that truth. And to showcase this for you, I want to share about a kind of pivotal moment in my journey. And it was right after I graduated from college. And up until then, I had been your typical good girl, very overachieving, working hard, being intelligent and capable and independent, and, just getting to the point where I was feeling stuck trying to do what makes sense and feeling very tired and burnt out and feeling like I had no idea who I really was, or just not feeling at all like the real me. And I had graduated from college, and I felt like the thing that made sense for me to do next was to find a job. And I had wanted to find one before I graduated because I looked around and all these fancy people were getting jobs, and I was feeling like I'm falling behind and I should have a job already in place and everything. And those few years in in school, in that college, like, they had really become very draining and very heavy. I went through a lot of things emotionally and with toxic family dynamics. And, I just really did not feel in place at that school and with those people. I just really felt out of place. And I didn't feel like I didn't really have friends and, people that I could really lean on. The only person I really had who really knew the real me was my partner, Lucas. And so there was just a lot going on and a lot of things that had been draining for many, 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 many years. And, I graduated, and I actually graduated in December. So I kind of had like the Christmas, I just kind of at, let that be, so to speak. But then it was like, the new year, and it was like, well, what makes sense for me to do is to find a job. And during that time, I really struggled with this sense of really noticing how much I was feeling like I was just feeling depleted and tired, and I kept learning things, and I kept planning new ways to manage my time better, and kept learning all these tips and strategies and the Pomodoro technique and applying all these fancy things. And for a while, I felt like it was working. I felt like, oh, yes, I'm getting momentum, and this is working. I'm never going to feel like that again. And then I would crash. I would just feel burnt out and exhausted. And it was almost like this sense of like just bicycling on a road and feeling like, yes, it's going. And then all of a sudden you just crash to the side of the road, and then I would just be beaten down. And I would just have to like lie on a couch for a week, and I would just be really, really out of it. And that would happen for a few cycles, in terms of just like happening over and over again and feeling like things were getting better and then crashing and then getting better and then crashing, and it just kept going for a while. And at the time, Lucas, my partner, he was also going to work or going to school or something. So I had a lot of time to myself during the day, which I feel like kind of just made it so that I got really like in this place of really having to meet myself, and I didn't kind of have school to go to and I didn't yet have a job to go to. So it was just really like I could not avoid myself anymore. And eventually I just got to this place of, I remember I was just sitting on the couch and I was just thinking about how much there was just so many things I wanted to do. And I wanted at the time to find that kind of job with like social impact and making a difference. And I wanted to kind of exercise more and I wanted to feel more alive and I wanted to feel more energized. And I knew that I had all these big goals and these big dreams that I wanted to do. But I kept feeling like I just couldn't, like I didn't have the capacity to, like I didn't have the energy to. And it kind of just felt like every time my mind was kind of in the sense of, let's go for it and let's do it. And there's so much to do. My body would just be like, nope, nope, not interested, not able to move forward with this. And I kind of started to think about it and I started to think about how long has this really been going on? Because like I started this with that it kind of started to become more obvious to me after I graduated from college. But when I really started to think about it, it became very clear that I had been burning out for ages. I mean, I think at that point, at least a decade. And it had gone in seasons where sometimes it was less present and I kind of felt a little bit better. And then other seasons were just really horrible. And I was really overworked and just stretched thin and burnt out and exhausted and depleted and just like the worst of the worst. So it had gone a little bit up and down, which I feel like is part of why I hadn't necessarily noticed it because we get so good at fooling ourselves. We get so good at telling ourselves, we're doing better now and things are improving and it won't get back to how bad it was. And we kind of also create these really horrible standards for ourselves where we think as long as we're not doing as shitty as we once did, meaning like it's not feeling as bad as once upon a time it did, we just tell ourselves that the way we're feeling now is okay, when in truth we're still feeling exhausted, we're still feeling burnt out and depleted. We're just comparing it to something that was really horrible instead of comparing it to something that would actually be healthy and empowering and energizing and something that we actually would feel good in. And so, like I said, I just kind of started to realize that this wasn't a problem that I had been going through the past, 3 months or something, the way that I was thinking to myself. This was a problem I had been dealing with for at least a decade. And when I had that epiphany, it just became crystal clear to me that this is what I needed to heal. This is what I needed to solve. It felt like this sense of I wanted to walk on this path. And it felt like, like those big goals and dreams and things I wanted to do were kind of like ahead of me in that path. And I just kept trying to reach for them and kept trying to like reach these things. And it felt like burnout. For me, it was burnout in this particular example, was just this big boulder blocking my path. And I had tried to get around it. I had tried to climb over it. I had tried to like dig my way under it, but it was just not budging. And it just became so, so clear to me that I need to face this. I need to resolve this. I need to heal through this before anything else is ever going to be really accessible to me. And before I can really get to creating and living in these things, because this huge burnout, it's getting in the way and it keeps getting in the way. And like I said, for me in that particular example, it was burnout. But there can be so many different variations of this. And I've had so many different variations of this. There were things where I was in a relationship and I debated with myself on whether I would end it for over a year before I went through and ended it. And it was the sense of like, how can I have the kind of relationship and the kind of life that I want when I keep staying in this relationship, and maybe for you, maybe it's a relationship that's just depleting you more than it's giving you. Maybe it's burnout or something related to your health that just needs to get your attention or prioritization. Maybe it's a job that the fact that you're going there and the fact that it's there is just depleting you and taking way more away from you than it's actually giving you. And maybe you won't be able to, build your dream business as long as you're constantly coming home feeling exhausted and depleted from that job that just is not working. So there's so many different variations of this, but so often there's something in our path that is making the other thing that we want to do too hard and too inaccessible. And where we eventually just get to this place of constantly wondering, like, isn't there more than this? Isn't there more to life than this? Isn't there more to a loving relationship than this? Isn't there more to a job than this? Isn't there more to building a business than this? Like, we just keep wondering. And then, and this is what I really want to dive into. What tends to happen with the women that I speak to, and what I tend to notice is that when we then get to this place of we have something that is not working out, something that we want to move through. And sometimes it can be very clear, like I said, like really having that epiphany of like, it's this job, it's this burnout. And other times we might still be searching a little bit and we just know that things aren't working out the way we want them to. But then the problem is that what I notice is that we then tend to get into this idea of needing to plan our way out of it and needing to see all the steps ahead from us before we can take the first step. And yet, here's the truth that I want to tell you, and that I want to tell you as sort of a, you know, from me to you, from future you to current you, as a way for you to stop searching for something that's not really coming. So the reality is that in this example, for example, when I realized that what I really needed to do was to heal from burnout, I made that my decision. I remember in the evening when Lucas came home from work, I told him, I've made a decision today. And I was firm in that. I knew that that was my priority. And I told him that. I said, I might search for jobs and I might get a job. I don't know. I might do other things, but this is my number one priority. And I made it so. I made it so that healing from burnout was my number one priority. And I said it's going to be until it is done. Now, here's the thing, and this is the thing I need you to know. I did not know how. I did not know how I was going to heal from burnout. Not only that, like I kind of mentioned earlier on, I had learned a lot and I had looked up a lot and I had tried to implement a lot of these like time management strategies and things like that and productivity hacks and all of that. So when I decided that, I assumed it would be one of those that just like worked out or that, I would learn another one and it would work out like that. But I didn't know how. And not only that, the things that actually allowed me and helped me to move through and heal and to solve that burnout, I didn't know they existed when I made that decision. For example, one of the biggest things that helped me move through burnout was learning about the 28-day cycle and the difference between the 28-day cycle and the 24-hour cycle, and essentially understanding that female bodies have a very different way of operating and that typical productivity hacks usually doesn't work for us. And cycle syncing and all of that stuff became a very big part of helping me move through the burnout. When I made that decision, when I decided and was firm with myself about this is my number one priority, this is what I'm going to move through, I didn't know that existed. I didn't know about the 28-day cycle. I had never heard about cycle syncing. I didn't know any of it. And all the other things that helped me heal and move through, I didn't know they existed. And so here's my question to you. If I had said, I'm going to heal from burnout, but before I begin that journey, I need to plan out how. What was I supposed to make that plan with? I would have used it. I would have made that plan using all these other productivity and time management tricks and tools and all of that that I knew about, but they weren't helping. If they had been helping, I probably wouldn't have needed to make the decision to heal from burnout in the first place. And so you see where I'm going. So, how was I supposed to make a plan using something that would actually help me when the thing that was going to help me I didn't even know existed? It's impossible, right? It's literally impossible. You can't know the how when you don't know the how. You can't make a plan based on the how when you don't know the how. And I just want to take a super brief moment to just let you know that it's not that you're wrong for wanting to have that plan in place. It is not that you're too much or that you're crazy or that you're the problem because you're wanting to have that plan in place. This is who you've been told to be. This is who you've had to be, and this is who you were expected to be. You were expected to be the good girl who always had things figured out, who always knew what was up, who always took care of herself, who was always smart and intelligent and capable, and you were always expected not to fail. So, of course, you feel like you need to have the plan in place before you take the first step because if you don't have the plan in place, then who knows what's going to happen? Then you venture into the unknown, and the unknown leaves a possibility for you to make a mistake, for you to fail, for you to disappoint someone, for you to not succeed. And the rules that you were given, that I was given, that we were given, tell you that that's not okay, that that's not possible. And so, of course, you feel like you have to have the plan in place. And that's important for you to know because it's important for you to honor that and validate that for yourself and understand that this makes sense that I feel this pressure to have it all figured out. It makes sense that I feel this way. And to feel like there's not anything wrong with me for over planning and over managing sometimes. So often, the self help gurus and idiotic male people out there, so often they can put us down so much for overthinking things. And yet they never stop to question why are we overthinking in the first place? Was it okay for us to just go for it and fail or make a mistake or not be perfect at it? Or was it always diminished and judged, ridiculed, belittled? Was it expected that we were supposed to be perfect at something that we had never done before? And so now we're stuck feeling trapped by that. That we're supposed to venture into new things. We're supposed to heal from burnout even though we've never done it. We're supposed to create a loving relationship even though we've never done it. We're supposed to build a thriving business and yet we've never done it. And somehow we're supposed to know how to do it and have it figured out and be able to guarantee that we will not fail or make mistakes or disappoint anyone before we start. That's impossible. And so, of course, it makes sense that you want to do that. And also, you can't do it. It won't happen. You won't be able to plan the perfect how without simply taking the first step. And that's the thing. I have, in that journey, in the same example of healing from burnout, it wasn't like that was a, 1 day thing, not a 1 week thing, not a 1 month thing, not a 1 year thing. It was a process. It was an evolution. And with every step that I took, I learned some things and had to unlearn a lot of things and discovered things. And then that helped me get to the next place where I was able to do more things. And for example, when I first started out, I was very limited in my capacity and I had to be very, very, very just limited in how much I was able to kind of put as a task for myself during the day. And I would get, like, there would be just very limited of how much I would get done in a day. And yet, that was what I needed at the time. And then over time, I was able to complete more during a day. But I wouldn't have been able to complete more if I hadn't first allowed myself to complete less. And it just built on each other like that. And so that's the thing. You also can't know how it's going to be once you have taken some of the first steps. You have to take the first steps and then see what you realize there and what you've learned and what you've noticed and what you've unlearned and what you've realized. And then you make new steps based on that knowledge and based on that wisdom and based on that sense of being someone else than you were back when you first started. And so, if you're feeling that gap between who you're expected to be and who you truly are, if you're feeling like you're stuck, you're constantly planning and thinking and learning about things, but not really being able to embody them, meaning you're not able to actually bring them into your body. You're not actually able to live through that and experience that and feel that. You just logically know about it. And if you're sensing that there's more to me than this, there's more aliveness, there's more passion, there's more power available to me than who I'm currently living as. And if I'm being honest with myself, this is not my true self. This is not me living from my truth. This is not me living by being true to myself and trusting myself as I move through, not expecting myself to have things perfect and have it all planned out. Then I want to let you know that, first of all, you're not going to know how until you just make the decision of what you want to go for. So, again, for me, that was knowing the what. I'm healing from burnout. That is my priority. Did not know how. Maybe for you, it's making the decision that the what is building a business I genuinely love. No idea how, but that's what I'm going to do. Maybe it's I'm going to heal through a lot of this emotional trauma. No idea how, but that's what I'm going to do. All you need is to decide the what. You need to root into that what. You need to make it your priority every single day, even when you don't know how. And the second thing I want to tell you is that you don't need to do more or work harder for you to be able to do that, for you to be able to move through the thing you want to move through and live in your truth the way you want to live it. And that's where we get caught, because when we're constantly looking for the how, instead of just making the decision for the what, we feel like we just have to do more. We feel like we're constantly needing to work harder because the things we're doing aren't working. When you're just making endless plans or learning endless tips and strategies, you're never going to stop learning more ways that you could solve this. But as long as you're stuck in that planning phase, in that learning and thinking about it phase, you're not going to get to actually implement them and experience them and then learn for yourself on, yep, this worked for me, this didn't, I didn't like that, I did like that, that helped, and that did not. You have to actually take the step forward. And I feel like the third thing with this that I want to tell you is that you have to believe in the vision before you see the results of it. So the thing that you're wanting to do, the what, the living a life free of burnout, building a business that feels exciting and gives you a thriving income, having a loving, passionate, supportive relationship that actually feels good to you, whatever it is, that reality, that vision that you have of a version of you and a life and reality in which you actually experience that and have that, you have to believe in it before you actually see the results of it. And now, can you just imagine with me for a second, so to speak? Back when I, went through this whole reflection process, and like I mentioned earlier in this video, I think I had been struggling for burnout for at least 10 years, if not more. And I hadn't really ever known a life outside of burnout, because that was maybe just when I was like a kid and didn't really know about all these things. And then the second achievements kind of became available, that burnout and hardworking, overachieving energy became part of who I was. And so I got to tell you, when I was going through that process, it was hard for me to imagine a life possible where I didn't struggle with burnout. Like the idea that I could live not feeling burnt out was very far-fetched. And yet I had to believe in it enough to take the steps towards it. And on top of that, not everybody else is going to understand it. You might tell someone that you're going to build a wildly successful business and they're not going to understand it. They're not going to believe it. They're not going to see it. And that doesn't make it wrong. It doesn't mean that it won't happen. It just means that you are handed a vision for your life. And you are currently the only one who can see it. Other people will only see it when it's out in the outer world, but you're able to see it before it's even come to fruition. But you're the only one who can, not because it's wrong, but because it was only given to you because it's your life. They have a vision for their own life, and you can't see that the same way that they can't see yours. And I feel like that is the thing I want to leave you with, that you need to take the step before you know how. You need to believe in the vision before you have a guarantee that it will work out, or before you see the results of it already having worked out. And the truth is, it is a little bit of a leap of faith. I'm not saying you have to do something that feels completely terrifying to your nervous system and you just have to, I don't know, just quit your job tomorrow and not care about anything. I'm not saying you have to do that. I'm just saying it is also a leap of faith. It is also impossible for you to have everything laid out perfectly for you to know that you won't ever take a misstep or fall a little. It is also a little bit of you taking that leap and trusting yourself to be able to move through that, trusting yourself to be able to get back up if you do fall down, and realize that what I heard someone say once is that you've always been able to deal with the present. We get scared about the future thinking, oh my God, how am I going to deal with that if that happens? But the truth is, if you're still here, which you have to be if you're watching this, you have always been able to move through the present moment, because otherwise you wouldn't be here. So there's no reason to believe that future you, when that is present, won't be able to move through the present. Even if it gets hard, even if it doesn't work out the way you thought it would, even if it gets, challenging or frustrating or just really crazy for a moment, or even if you fall down, make a mistake, disappoint someone, you've never not been able to deal with the present. So there's no reason to believe you wouldn't be able to deal with the present then. And when you're ready to take that first step, I hope you'll let me know and let me know what that step is for you, and affirm to yourself that I'm going to take this step even though I don't know how. I'm going to take this step and I'm going to take that leap of faith and I'm going to trust myself through it, even if I don't know how to do that yet either. Thank you so, so much for watching, and I hope this was helpful for you, and I'll see you in the next video.